Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Before we start the official webinar, I just want to go over a couple housekeeping tips. During this webinar, we will be recording it, so you will receive a link to the recording afterwards. If you have any questions during the webinar itself, there is a questions box on the right-hand side of your screen, which we'll be reviewing at the end of the webinar. There's also a chat function, so if you're running into any issues or have any questions directly for any of us on the call, you can pop them in there as well. I think that's everything from the housekeeping side. So with that, welcome to the webinar, Bold Predictions for 2017. We're really excited to be here today. So my name is Polly Flink. I'm with Windsor Circle. And if we go to the next slide, I'd be happy to introduce our speakers for today. So here we are. We have Jean from the Plum Tree Group, myself, and then Maria from CommerceBlend. So welcome you all to the webinar.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Delgado. I'm the community manager at CommerceBlend. Basically, we're a community for all Americans, but we'll perhaps tell you a little bit more about that later on. I'm very thrilled to be here with you today, and just let's get started. How about you, Jean? How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. Thanks, Maria. This is Jean from the Plum Tree Group. We're specialists in e-commerce development, digital marketing, and user experience. And we're very excited to present today's webinar. So thank you for the introduction.
Great. So with that, we're going to just jump in and let you know a little bit about what we're going to talk to today. So we're going to start out looking at the online customer and sort of how that's changed and how consumer behavior has changed over the past 5 years or so. Then Jean's going to take it away by looking back at the trends and the hot things from 2016. We'll make some predictions for the upcoming holidays, what's left of them in 2017. And then Maria will actually talk through some strategies you can adopt to have a more proactive approach to marketing instead of a reactive one. And then we'll just go through some recaps and takeaways followed by Q&A at the very end of this. So with that, we're going to just hop in. I believe we might have just skipped a slide.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah.
We're giving you a preview of what's to come.
Yeah, we went way ahead on the presentation. Sorry about that.
Okay, perfect. So before we jump into that, we do have a very special offer for you all today as attendees. Basically, there's a guide that you can download that talks through the 7 most important action items from this webinar that will help you sort of, prioritize your predictive marketing or your marketing in general. Talks through metrics and KPIs you should keep in mind for reporting success and the tools and resources you need. So I'm going to share a link in the chat window right now. And you can download the guide there if you're so interested in doing that. So with that, let's talk about the online customer. So specifically, we're going to look at the past 5 years and how things have changed. And in order to do that, I wanted to kind of look at e-commerce as a whole to start. So here's some stats that we have basically borrowed from Internet Retailer and a bunch of their studies. And what you're seeing here is in 2011, e-commerce represented 4.6% of retail sales. 2012, it was 5.2. 2013, it was 6%. 2014, it was 6.5. 2015, also 6.5. But the revenue went up there. And really, what you're seeing here is a trend where e-commerce is starting to be a bigger part of the retail market in terms of revenue and then also sales. So Maria, if you go to the next slide, you can see here sort of the retail year-over-year growth. So from 2011 to 2015, as everything continues to grow, you're seeing that e-commerce, that dark blue line at the top, is starting to grow at a faster pace. And this becomes more transparent in when we look at just e-commerce as a whole on the next slide here, where what you can see is that there's a pretty steady increase from 2011 to 2014, and then from 2014 to the projections for this year, since it hasn't ended yet, e-commerce is really kind of upping the ante and starting this sort of progression. And there's a couple of things that when you look at sort of consumer behavior that play into this, which we're going to talk about now. So over the past 5 years, You've seen this move from consumers browsing online to buying online, and a lot of that has to do with as technology has evolved, it's been easier, but there's also more trust in the security of our sites and the security of the shopping carts in general. There's been an increase in average spend, which has a lot to do with this whole buying online. It's easy, you're there, everything's shipped to you. There's a move from desktop to mobile to even multi-device shopping. So in this one report, it was found that 70% of consumers indicated that they personally use 3 or more devices. And that's a lot of devices, right? When you think back to I don't know, when I was in college, I had a computer and a phone that I couldn't do anything with, right? But now people have a phone, a laptop, a tablet, a smart TV. So really creating that seamless experience is super important. And then you're seeing this demand in the market for a personalized experience. So interestingly enough, 23% of consumers say they want ads to be tailored to the content that they're viewing, where 21% expect the ads to be tailored to their location. So not only just what they've viewed before, but relevant to what they've viewed in the past, and then also relevant to their location, so looking at geolocation and geo-targeting as well. So the piece here we're really going to dig in on is this demand for a personalized experience. And this has sort of been seen across the board, so in-store and online, this consumer demand. So in-store, what's been found is that 82% are asking for automatic discounts at checkout for loyalty points. 57% want real-time promotions. 54% want complimentary item suggestions, so this sort of personal shopping experience, which is kind of impossible to do if you don't actually have information about the customer to begin with. And then online, 64% want website optimization by device, so that seamless experience. Promotions for items the customer is considering, so looking at browse behavior, search behavior, what people have looked at on your site, and sending relevant information according to that. And then 48% want reminders to order items that they might have run out of or need to be refilled. And this is super interesting because this speaks to sort of retailers in the consumable market all of a sudden have an opportunity to really get in front of the customers in an extremely relevant but also helpful way, which can, as we've seen, increase revenue. And so really what all of this gets at is this is where sort of predictive marketing comes into play and becomes a big differentiator in the marketplace. And so with that, I'm actually going to hand it over to Jean, who's going to look back at the trends of 2016. You'll see some nice parallels to what we sort of have seen in the marketplace so far, and what Jean's going to talk about as well. So with that, Jean, it's all yours.
Thanks, Polly. And yeah, again, before we can look ahead to 2017, it's very helpful to see trends that have emerged or really crystallized during 2016. So the first of those trends was in delivery expectations. When you think back of e-commerce 4 or 5 years ago, if you place an order online and received a package within 4 or 5 days, it was kind of the norm. And in fact, it was even considered pretty fast. Now with services like Amazon Prime, next day delivery is really become an expectation. And in 2017, moving along this continuum, same day delivery is projected to start becoming the norm. So things have really evolved along the timeline of delivery. The second trend that has emerged, we like to call clicks to bricks. So when you think of e-commerce first emerging in the last decade, the digital world was really trying to emulate the brick and mortar world. Well, there's been a reversal of that, a reversal of influence of sorts, where now the brick and mortar world is increasingly trying to simulate the online experience. Wanting to create more immersive user experiences in the store. There are some stores that actually have set up room sequencing that mimics a website experience. So you walk through 5 or 6 rooms that are all intertwined as though you were clicking through on your computer. And physical stores are using more colorful graphics and more dynamic floor sequences and lighting so that they can really create a visual world like a website. Really try to create Instagrammable moments of sorts. And one retailer, in fact, has created an editor's room as well. So in the editor's room, this is for a shoe business where customers can sit and share their opinions and go back and forth. They've created essentially like a forum within their physical store to emulate a forum online. So there are many ways this is taking shape, but really the two experiences have flip-flopped in the last year or so. Another huge trend, which is really more in a crystallization process, has been going on for years, but has become a 100th monkey of sorts, is the increased omni-channel demand. Just to define this, because we hear the term all the time, omni-channel retail is serving customers seamlessly and interchangeably across different channels, whether desktop, mobile, brick and mortar, etc. And as vital as this has become, really only about 5% of companies have a fully executed omni-channel strategy at this point, even though about 9 out of 10 say they can no longer rely on traditional sales channels to drive growth. 7 out of 10 shoppers are seeking in-store stock level information because that's critical to making their purchase, but less than a third of retailers can really provide this information. And of those that are out there right now, one that seems to be doing a particularly good job of it is Walmart, believe it or not. Walmart has become very good at pushing seasonal promotions online, where you make the purchase online but go in store for the pickup. And they've seen a rise in their club pickup sales by about 50%. So one particularly good use case of omni-channel selling. So extending this, going to the next slide, it's really been nothing short of a paradigm shift because now merchants have to think in terms more of omni-channel logistics and merchandising, not just logistics. And this is even changing real estate, because more space is required for 3PL distribution centers in densely populated areas, and there will be becoming less square footage of retail space and more for this logistics as we move forward. So a big shift into the omni-channel demand in the last 12 months. Another huge trend that has really reached a critical mass is social commerce. In the last 12 months, there really have been big breakthroughs in selling through social channels like Pinterest and Twitter, which introduced buttons that allow companies to post and sell their items directly from those sites. The Facebook e-commerce platform has really matured to the extent where it has become integrated into solutions like Shopify and BigCommerce. Instagram has now instituted shoppable photos. Even in the last month, they've introduced a new level of that. And there are other approaches as well, like user-generated content, where in certain instances, users can share images of themselves using a product, upload it to a website, and this can even replace more stock images on product detail pages. And then also this user-generated content can be used for retargeting ads, say on Facebook, where instead of getting more stale product detail images, you're getting users in action with products. So social commerce has really become a very vital trend in the last year as well. Beacon technology has become more prevalent as well, where stores can implement these beacon signal devices so that when you enter the store with a mobile device, you receive greetings or more detailed product information, discounts and promotions that are available on the device. There's one example of McDonald's that has a 360 view of their store. So when you're looking at your device, it literally looks like you're in the store, and then you walk into the store so that the environment is virtually the same. And it's a strange example of this immersive technology where life imitating app imitating life, and just showing how the digital experience and the brick and mortar experience are becoming more and more intertwined and more fully integrated. Niche flash sales, a bit of a tongue twister, are still very much in the zeitgeist, and for a lot of, especially for sites that don't typically have these kind of sales, it can be very novel and very successful, creating an urgency that's very difficult to pass up. This can be particularly strong as well on mobile devices, and also if there's an element of personalization that is included in the flash sales, conversion rates are higher. And there's even flash sales now making their way into email marketing campaigns as well. So you're not limited. You can think outside the site when it comes to flash sales. Virtual sales forces have really emerged quite a bit in the last year. So online support teams don't have to just sit and wait for customer questions where there's a dialog box in the corner of the site that gets untouched. Companies are really becoming much more proactive in this way with their virtual sales forces. And instead of waiting for customers to buy, these virtual sales forces can begin to interact with customers and coaxing them towards a purchase in real time on the site, and can even go beyond the box to send SMS messages. And also there are technologies now for automated suggestions based on user preferences that all make for a much more interactive, more persuasive virtual sales experience, no longer something that's just inert and idle on the side of the page. Cross-border commerce has obviously been growing for years. Global trade by traditional methods has really hit a long plateau, but continues to grow enormously, both B2B and B2C online purchasing during the last several years. Projected that by 2020, in North America, sales, cross-border commerce sales will reach 140 billion, Europe 180, and Asia Pacific region 245 billion within the next 3 years or so. And interestingly, 12 countries comprise about 80% of the world's cross-border commerce at this point in time. So it's very concentrated. Australia, UK, Hong Kong, Germany, Singapore, Japan, Brazil, Switzerland, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and France are that big group of 12 right now. So there's a tremendous opportunity for this to increase and to become part of that growing market. More fulfillment centers around e-commerce fulfillment centers will be required near major international airports as part of this, and it also can help to have local partners in different areas of the world in order to have more globalization with your business. And one thing that's very helpful and encouraging along these lines is that even when there is a struggling economy, e-commerce really tends to thrive. So this cross-border commerce is something that will continue to grow. The ninth and final trend that we wanted to touch on in regards to 2016 is real-time analytics. It wasn't that long ago, and still practiced in many companies, where the C-level will review analytics, say once a month, maybe once a week if they're particularly proactive. But that's becoming an obsolete approach as more merchants need real-time analytics, so they can see what are behaviors doing on the site right now. How can we target and promote to them based on their browser preferences in the moment, based on their wish lists, based on some of their shopping history. How can we address this in real time? And there's also become methods to respond to whether cart abandonment or browsing abandonment, even one method where you're able to make an offer as you're exiting a site to try and re-engage customers that might be leaving. So real-time analytics are really becoming an essential norm to the contemporary e-commerce merchant. And with that, we've covered pretty fully 2016. I'd like to hand the reins over to Maria at CommerceBlend for, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to Polly, I'm jumping the gun, for bold predictions for the holiday season and for 2017.
Hey, thanks, Jean. Maria, if you want to take it, I'm happy to give you these slides, though. um,
I know you're the expert there.
So Jean really teed this up really nicely. A lot of what you're going to see sort of for the predictions do come from what we've seen in the past, right? So the evolutionary steps that come from what retailers have already been doing in 2016 and have been successful with. So with that, we're going to talk about three predictions. And so right now what we're seeing is online shopping is continuing to grow, as we've seen by the numbers. The number of retailers vying for attention continues to grow. So really 2017 is going to be the year where you need to differentiate and claim your space in the market. As e-commerce, sort of the threshold to enter e-commerce is less than it is to open a full brick and mortar store. So you see a lot more people entering it, being accessible, using the tools to kind of claim that space, and that's super important. So the three things that we really see as being big differentiators for the rest of the holidays and then 2017 and beyond. First is one-to-one mass personalization. Well, that's just going to be the new norm, right? Creating a seamless experience across devices is key. And retailers will start embracing this predictive marketing to stay competitive, not just as something that's like, oh, that's interesting, and we should probably look into it. The reason is it reduces the risk of churn. It gives you a leg up on your competition. So we're going to talk about each one of these in turn. So let's start with the one-to-one mass personalization. So really what we're saying here when we talk about one-to-one mass personalization is that retailers who are embracing segmentation and personalization are going to start winning in the retail space. And you saw this when I was talking about this sort of consumer demand, right? And people who want to be served relevant ads. They want to see helpful information. So where is this going to play out is going to be sort of across the board again. So optimizing your website, your email marketing strategy, and your in-store experience. And how you get started in any of those avenues is really getting access to your data in an actionable way. This allows you to make the right decisions to actually interact with your customers across device, in-store, online, through chat function. It really is sort of the gatekeeper to being able to do the things that will make you successful as a retailer. And so yeah, I think that pretty much covers that piece. The next piece is creating a seamless experience across device. And really, I should add on here because Jean just made the point so wonderfully that this also is across stores too. So not only online but in store as well. Are you getting a similar experience, which can be done through things like the room sequencing or beacon technology as well that Jean spoke to. So what we're seeing is that consumers are shopping on multiple devices and expecting the same level of support and service regardless. And so sort of three things you can do. The first is make sure you have a mobilely responsive site. This is super important just because as technology continues to get better, devices are easier to shop on. People use them more often to do things like answer an email that has a flash sale and buy something directly. Also, with Google changing its algorithms in January, this is something you're going to want to jump on ASAP. So you're going to start dropping in ranks if you don't have a mobilely responsive site. Second is just create the right incentives to ensure that your customers sign in and then stay signed in when they're browsing across their devices as well. So having things like one-step checkout, automatic loyalty points and coupons that are applied, and a personal shopper experience are a great way to get people to sign in, stay signed in on their devices, and allows you to then track sort of their behaviors and understand what they're doing before they make a purchase as well. This will just give you better insights and help you create that experience. And then thirdly, if you have a brick and mortar presence, look into hooking up your POS data. This will really give you a full view of how each customer shops. So you might have people who only shop online, you might have people who only shop in store, but chances are there's a very, very big cross-section who do both. So are you serving them the right message? Are you inviting them to your VIP Thanksgiving holiday sneak peek, right? Or for the fashion show that you're holding in store. So this is a great way to re-engage people at that time. So that's sort of just a couple things to think about when you're creating a seamless experience across device. And then the last piece here is really just predictive marketing in general to keep a competitive edge. So in this study that was done, predictive marketers are 2.9 times more likely to report revenue growth at rates that are higher than the industry average. So what this speaks to is that when you add predictive marketing data into what you're already doing, you're going to see a good return. And there's a couple easy ways to do this. So the first is just start with your low-hanging fruit. So incorporating dynamic product recs into your existing automated campaigns. side note to that, if you're not doing automated campaigns, things like a welcome series, a win back series, cart recovery, that's a great place to start. You can then incorporate dynamic product recommendations, things like that, into the campaign. And then the second one is just creating a win-back series based on predicted churn. This allows you to actually have a better idea, instead of guessing when you think a customer may not come back based on latency, a better idea of sort of each individual customer's buying behavior. Secondly, this goes without saying in the marketing world, but just test, and test some more. So we know this, that not every campaign, every idea is not everything's going to be a knockout. But you can really do things to optimize your foundational campaign. So things that are already running well, optimize those first. Then go back and look at the campaigns that you think should be doing well, but maybe aren't doing as well, and rejigger those. Look through, how can we make this a more relevant and better experience? How do we get people to engage? So key campaigns look at there: your best customer, your win back, your welcome series, and cart recovery. And just do these as you go. So get the foundation set up and then iterate from there. And then also just get creative. So just because a segment of customers might be small, it doesn't mean there aren't lucrative pieces of your business. And so speaking to that right audience with the right message really can pay off in ways that just blasting your entire database really won't. A great example of this is a client, Ghirardelli. They had a small subset of their customers who bought a certain type of small chocolate. And they pulled that segment out and said, okay, we're going to run a campaign on this group. And it wasn't a very large group, but what they saw is that the engagement, and it was just asking them to make another purchase or repurchase this again with some product recommendations, they saw higher conversions on that than they did on their normal promotions. So just thinking through, like, how can you slice and dice your data to group people in ways that make sense to send them those messages is a really important function of predictive marketing in general. And I think with that, sort of my spiel about 2017 and times to come, Maria is going to run with that pretty much and go through additional strategies to adopt a proactive approach in 2017. So Maria, I'm handing the reins to you.
Thank you, Polly, for that warming welcome and for walking us through the predictions for 2017. I'm sure our audience today will find all of these inspiring and clear enough so they know how to remain competitive by next year. Now, from my side, I'm going to talk to you about 7 strategies that have been put into practice by those brands that are not only aware of the power behind predictive marketing, but which are already practicing it and seeing an uplift in their retention rates and revenue. So the first strategy we are going to discuss is dynamizing your segments. I'm pretty sure that if I asked you, what are the 3 words that come to your mind when I say segmentation, almost everyone in the room will say at the very least groups, demographics, behavior, and perhaps location. Well, that's how segmentation has been traditionally looked at and understood. But the problem right now with that concept is that it's falling short on marketing effectiveness, as those words will give you broad groups and consequently broad marketing tactics when trying to position your brand and, most of all, creating a consistent revenue stream. So the way dynamic segments help you to adopt predictive marketing is by pushing you to be more granular on the variables you use to classify prospects and customers. In fact, there are 3 types of data that you should collect and analyze simultaneously: transactional data, interactive data, and external data. With transactional data, you basically aim to understand where is the money coming from, and that's when questions like the ones shown on screen might jump into the scenario. On the other hand, with interactive data, you aim to identify sources or on-site elements that engage the user with the products he's viewing and thus make it more likely for him to complete a purchase. Finally, with external data, you should aim to listen to the voice of your customer and from it identify what other components of the overall experience you are delivering might contribute to boost or stalling sales. So below you will see a couple of action items that we suggest you take to make of these 3 types of data something useful, such as creating segments based on similar behaviors or creating clusters of high-value customers to whom you tackle various loyalty programs. Moving on, the second strategy we have for you is providing real-time rewards. Ideally, Real-time rewards should be the result of your brand and team innovating with truly personalized incentives that are given on a fast and frictionless manner that go beyond just personalizing through the user's name, and is a way of compensating prospects and customers for submitting their personal details. Recall that this compensation is something that users are expecting from you in exchange of them paying a price in the form of data, because that is nowadays the price in the online realm, we could say. Moreover, they not only expect you to give away just anything, they actually expect you to provide something highly personalized that allows them to feel immediate recognition. In the end, if you execute this strategy right, your relationship with your customers should strengthen, and eventually through these rewards, you should be able to deliver a richer set of experiences that differentiates you from your competition by tackling directly into your customers' interests. On the other hand, coupons and loyalty points might keep your customers happy for a while, but they won't sustain a long-term relationship. So it is recommended that using data and trying to predict upon it, you identify gaps between current product attributes and what your customers and prospects are saying out there in the form of strengths, disadvantages, or challenges. Bringing up some real-life examples that illustrate this point, we can mention respectively the cases of the Post Office and O2, both companies located in the UK. The first of them, being a logistics company, successfully implemented a loyalty scheme called Drop and Go. In short, what the company achieved through this scheme was to better serve one of their most valuable customers, SMEs, and win their loyalty by tracking their behavioral patterns. Over time, they were capable of facilitating postage payment through a prepaid card. So in that way, SMEs could go through a fast-track queue on their deliveries. The second example, O2, competes within the telecom industry. And what is worth mentioning about this case is that not only they achieved to successfully keep up to speed with the fast change of their customers' needs when using mobile devices, but also they found a way of differentiating and making the experience more relevant through this medium by identifying key passion points, such as music gigs, gaming, and TV. For this, O2 partnered with key brands to ensure that by promoting this co-branded offer, it wasn't easy for competitors to copy them, nor it was difficult for them to stay relevant on a day-to-day basis. Now, the fourth strategy I want to talk about is automated retention. And perhaps this is among the most important ones for predictive marketing, as it is a proven fact that retaining an existing customer is much more profitable than trying to acquire a new one. However, as online competition intensifies, the choice for your customer to go and purchase from your competitors just gets easier. That's why it's so important that first, you identify scenarios where customer spend and engagement is low, such as abandoned carts. Once you've done that, you should create dynamic segments that you can track as they browse through your store in order to identify what might be holding them back of completing the purchase or going for an upsell. As well, it is worth to track the positive, as these events might hide other golden mines. Therefore, make sure to track interactions that show areas or elements of interest to your customers. So either way, you can take your findings and plan campaigns that tackle the root of the problem automatically, allowing you to capitalize on customer intent. As suggested action items that are worth following to execute this strategy, you can either create email campaigns for product replenishment or product recommendations, which Polly just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, assuming you want to target your current customers. Or you can either create on-site banners or social retargeting campaigns, in case you want to target visitors who haven't signed up on your site. Now, about Smart and Search, which is the fifth strategy in our list, we can say that nowadays, category search isn't necessarily what persuades a potential buyer to purchase. Instead, variables such as price, sizes, styles, colors, capacity, have much more weight throughout the decision-making process. Thus, to display the most relevant result and to reduce the time a shopper spends on looking for a product, merchants need to go beyond default product recommendations by category. And the best way you can do this is by partnering with someone who already has the know-how on applying machine learning and who has the technical resources to capitalize upon smart search. Ideally, that partner should allow you to identify customer preferences with more accuracy, as more transactions and interactions from customers can be gathered on a historical record. Eventually, this sort of data should tell the algorithms behind search how to build a more diverse and personalized catalog of recommended products to various customers, leading eventually to higher conversion rates and higher average order values. As for the sixth strategy to adopt predictive marketing, we have conversational commerce, which is a little bit related to what Jean mentioned previously about when he was talking about virtual Salesforce. And on this matter, big brands within the e-commerce industry, such as Shopify, have started to invest in IT systems that allows the brand to use chatbots to resolve customer issues, provide recommendations, create wish lists, and interact with buyers in real time. All of the previous leveraged by the power of semantic processing and machine learning. But indeed, being able of going through these processes does require a lot of incoming data from real users, so it's easier to offer more responsive approaches that anticipate a user's specific need. However, the news is that increasingly consumers are using chat and mobile messaging apps to find and select products and services, as well as to complete the payment process. As a real-life example of this, we can mention the case of Uber users and how they're able to order and pay for a ride using Facebook Messenger. So, given this situation, it comes a point where you have the opportunity to enrich your knowledge about what your customer is looking for through contextual information that is increasingly collected through messaging apps such as Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, WeChat, or Viber. For the user, this experience is also practical as they are always connected to a mobile device. They aren't changing any of their lifestyle habits to use or engage with a chatbot, which in the end serves as the brand's virtual sales force. So, as an action that you can take to execute this strategy, we recommend you look for and partner with a payment gateway. Already that, as I said before, it is mobile messaging apps and the transactions that are being carried out through that medium, the ones that are facilitating the process of prediction from transactional and contextual data collection. And now that we speak about data collection, it is time to introduce the last strategy within our list, which is creating your own predictive model. Now, I should warn you that even though the scope of this webinar doesn't pretend to delve deep into the technical and the statistical side of predictive modeling, as that is something that usually is more on the hands of an in-house person who knows about the statistics or a third party whose core business is focused on predictive software that incorporates the model and algorithms, it is our intention to give you some clues of what should be considered at a high level when moving from reactive to predictive modeling. So, on that note, you should never forget that the overarching goal of a predictive model is to uncover the next best action scenarios using customer data to indicate the best offer or communication to send. In order to do that, you should start by being aware of three main requisites. First, your organization needs a culture where data is democratized. Working on silos or being selfish about data sharing between departments isn't allowed. Second, you should always go beyond descriptive findings and ask yourself the why of everything. When you do this on social media, for example, you might be able to uncover personality traits for your customer segments. Third, you should be open to act on insights that may seem counterintuitive. Recall that some of the most successful innovations out there were the result of someone willing to take the risk of testing out something that no one has ever thought of before. So to finalize, these are the 4 major steps that anyone pretending to create and apply a predictive model should follow. First, define data inputs and collect them. This could be transactional, demographic, interactive, or external data. And you should be aware to validate these inputs with business stakeholders just to avoid junk data within your model. Second, train a statistical model to analyze and compute your inputs. Consider as well that each of those inputs should have an assigned weight within the computation, depending on the relevancy they have over end results, such as sales, for example. Third, test the performance of the model on different datasets, so it's easier for you to identify errors. And finally, once you're satisfied with the model's performance, implement it and start creating dynamic segments in which you can predict the likelihood of conversions. So that was a long way to go. And just recapping, a way you can keep these strategies with yourself is through an additional resource that CommerceBlend has prepared for you. And Polly mentioned it to you before at the beginning as well. So basically, it is an action guide that, as I was saying, contains the 7 strategies we just outlined here. But in addition to outlining the strategical initiatives that you can decide to choose to make the transition, you will also find metrics and KPIs that you should keep in mind to report success. So actually, for example, your CEO knows that whatever you're doing towards predictive marketing and adopting that approach internally is really paying off for the company's interests. The guide will also contain some tools and resources that you will need to execute basically each of these strategies, going from the most simple to the most complex. So as Polly was saying, you can go to the right on the chat window and find the link there and use it to download the guide right now, as we will make it this is something that we haven't taken to public yet. You're kind of our privileged first users on getting it. So don't miss it and make sure you download your guide. And now seems like we have some time left for Q&A. I'll try to see over here some of the questions you have. So actually, here's a question. Perhaps Polly can answer it. It says, why is it that despite its potential, predictive marketing isn't such a widespread approach nowadays?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And what we're seeing is there is a growing population of retailers who are starting to implement predictive marketing. But one of the biggest barriers to doing predictive marketing is really having the right data integration to be able to get that information. Or in most cases, when you partner with a third-party vendor, you need to kind of vet whether they have this capability or not. Do they have a data science team that has created models to run your data against to give you these predictive assets? And so that's something that you'll see a lot in sort of the marketplaces. Retailers have maybe a data connection, but it's a simple one. So they're getting whatever's in the e-com platform, but there's no extra step to layer in that predictive data based on those predictive models created. So that's sort of what we're seeing is there's a shift, and you're seeing that in sort of when you talk to the marketers of a retailer, but you're also seeing that in terms of the hiring practices. You're running into VPs of customer insights and retention, which is something that didn't exist before. So that's a very interesting change we're starting to see. And I think as time goes on and as people start to kind of move from simple data integrations to the integrations with predictive, that will really speed up that process.
Okay, so thank you for that answer, Polly. I see someone was asking for the link as well, so
let me resend it right now.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
In the meantime, as you do that, I also saw a question that at least I believe I can start answering, and perhaps any of you guys can support me on this. It says, what is the time restraint on implementing a predictive marketing strategy? What I can tell from our experience is that it's not as there's like a time limit for you to, or a fixed time limit, I should say, to implement these strategies. Obviously, say the ideal scenario would be that as soon as you start, as your store is functional and up and running and operating and making sales, the ideal scenario would be that you could gather all of that data in real time, and as you gather it in real time, act accordingly. That's why we focus. We try to make a strong focus on automation, for example, because automation will allow you to act on a timely basis with your customers and retain them. Because again, as I was saying, now the level of competition online is very high. So actually, it is just a matter of a few seconds of a bad experience or a few seconds of not getting what you're expecting on time. So you just change your mind and go to the competitor, right? So in short, it is important that you try to do everything as much as possible on real time. And anyways, also another way I view this question, I don't know if perhaps that helps the audience, is that with those strategies, we don't mean that you need to implement them all at the same time. Basically, you just can't pick. The ideal scenario is that you just pick one or two to start with, perhaps the most simple ones, and yes, just get started from there. I don't know if perhaps you, Jean or Polly, want to add something to this question.
Jean, do you want to go ahead? Or?
I think Maria did a pretty comprehensive job of responding. Polly, as the expert in predictive marketing, perhaps you have some additional insights.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Maria really hit it on the head here. I would say the one thing when you're implementing any sort of predictive marketing is know that there's a lot of this is a cheesy saying, but you're going to get get out what you put in, if that makes sense. So whenever you're implementing a new software or a new initiative, there is some upfront cost in terms of your team's time. So making sure the data integration is working, making sure that all of your campaigns that you're doing are set up correctly. But once it's started, it becomes less of a time investment and more of a check in and optimize opportunity, if that makes sense. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're trying to budget time resources from your team in order to do initiatives like this.
Right, and I see another question here. It says, assuming I'm a small e-commerce store with few items and just starting to grow visits, will I get any representative insights to adopt predictive marketing? So perhaps, well, what I know about that is that, as we were kind of saying, the more data you have, the more accurately that the algorithms that work behind the scenes on this type of softwares, the better they will, I mean, the better input they will have to respond accordingly, right? So I should say, obviously, if you're just starting your store, perhaps you first want to get just some traction and get some traffic first, hopefully some recurring traffic, so you can start identifying patterns. But I don't know if you have something else to add here, Polly.
Yeah, so again, spot on with that. When you're a smaller retail, if you're just starting out, the goal is really to acquire customers at that point, because until there are customers, there's not a whole lot to predict and to retain, right? So there are certain campaigns you can implement, things like cart recovery or even browse abandonment, site search abandonment campaigns that leverage some of the predictive capabilities, but isn't full blown in terms of an entire predictive retention marketing strategy. So I say that it's important to start with the right set of tools, and things like cart recovery, things like browse, abandonment, site search, are very useful tools to have, but you do need to have visitors on your site, and a fair number of them, as Maria was saying, in order to make it really worthwhile at that point.
And over here, thank you for that, Polly. Sorry,
No,
I was getting excited by someone who's kind of curious here. Is Carrie Messenger. So Carrie is asking, first, we're an agribusiness with 350,000 SKUs. We need to rework our e-commerce design. Where would you start first? So perhaps, Jean, I'm pretty sure you can. You are totally capable of answering that question.
Just so I make sure I heard this clear, they're an agribusiness with 350,000 SKUs?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would imagine in that scenario, as kind of an answer to the previous one or follow-up, this is the exact inversion. You probably have tremendous data from those 350,000 SKUs and your purchasing habits and customer activity and behavior. So I think the first thing goes back to what Polly was saying earlier, when you're first initiating any kind of predictive marketing, is to make sure that you have sort of your fundamentals handled, and that there are not any gaps in your data collection right now, and seeing exactly what we have to work with at the moment and what data collection strategies would need to be initiated first, so that in order for predictive marketing to work effectively, we make sure that we're getting the volume and quantity of data needed to strategize and create a campaign that's going to have the same effectiveness as, say, some of the replenishment campaigns that Windsor Circle is really quite renowned for. And that's actually an aside that I was going to ask Polly to perhaps elaborate on a little bit, how some of those replenishment success stories work. And obviously in an agribusiness, replenishment is a very key part of that, so I think that would tie in perfectly.
But sorry, before you expand on that answer, Polly, Carrie was saying that they are kind of, data is somewhat lacking. That's his comment. So just for you to take into consideration while you answer or expand on that answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's some good background there. Thank you. And Jean, thanks for that setup there. So if the data is lacking, that's the first thing you want to sort of tackle, is how do you get access to the data itself. Once you have that data, that's going to help you understand where the holes and the gaps are, right? So you could have a lot of people coming into your site, they land on a certain page, and then they put something in their cart and then they leave, but they don't actually do anything. In that case, it might be something where you need to look through creating a cart recovery campaign. It might be people are using your site search functionality if you have that, but they're not seeing the right results, in which case you need to look at reorganizing your sort of category and product level information and reworking that area. It's hard to make a full prediction on that without, or I guess diagnosis, without understanding exactly what you do and don't have access to, but that's a good place to start. Is once you have the data, you can start honing in on those pockets and filling in those gaps, as Jean was saying. To his point about replenishment, in the agribusiness and in any sort of consumable goods business, this is a great way to be able to re-engage customers who have purchased from you and to keep them purchasing from you. I mean, I know the number of times I bought something online and then I'm driving home and realize that I ran out of the face cream. So I'm just like, well, I need some, and I go to the nearest Target, right? So that's a lost sale right there. But if someone reminded me a couple days before, maybe even a week before I was about to run out, that would be a really good chance that A, it'd be memorable, B, it'd be top of mind, and C, I would make a purchase, because I'd be getting that information ahead of schedule, knowing I'm running out of my face cream and making sure that I have it in time to start using it again. So our system, what it does, just to give you sort of that background, is we look at a buyer's purchasing cadence, and the email series that they get is based off of that, and then incorporates things like product recommendations as well, but it's just an automated triggered email campaign based on each person's individual buying cadence.
And Polly, just to add to that, in terms of segmentation, if a client has a rhythm of ordering, say, at 1 month intervals, and they've been doing it for 18 months, and then all of a sudden they vanish for 4 months, you can be fairly certain that they've gone elsewhere. So, you know, on the one level, you want to anticipate when replenishment needs to happen, and you send them some kind of reminder. But if they're lost, then they go in sort of a different bucket and would get a different kind of campaign because you know they need to replenish. So, just wanted to point out that nuance.
Yeah, that's a great nuance, and 100% correct. At that point, they would go into probably a win-back series of sorts, or you could even try retargeting them using a lot of the data that you have available at that point. So that's a really, really great point to bring up, Jean.
Okay, so I believe now we still have some time left. I believe so, right? Like 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's another question. It says, retargeting, reconfiguration of site itself, what is the easiest low-hanging fruit? So I mean, my intuition would tell me that regardless of if you're a big business or small business, retargeting could be the easiest one because it can be done faster. It can be done based on the traffic that you have currently, whether that's big or small. And in that way, you can still try to keep captive some of your visits, right, and try to convert them. Whereas reconfiguring your site, well, that might require a little bit more of investment in terms of time, basically, and perhaps some budget. So I don't know if you agree with that, Eugene or Polly.
Yeah, Jean, do you want to speak to that?
I think you addressed it pretty well, Maria, and nothing particular to add to that.
Yeah, I definitely think that that pretty much makes sense. I just saw sort of the end of that too. We're talking about getting a lot of purchases through keyword referrals, many one-time buyers versus regular customers. So speaking to that, and this is all sort of like one question, if you have a lot of one-time buyers and not many regular customers, I would start looking into things like retention campaigns. So along with that is retargeting, and definitely sort of the low-hanging fruit when you're thinking through how to re-engage. And even being able, like when you have access to the data, as I keep saying, and sort of my soapbox, if you will, being able to pull that data out to then load in to, omni-channel platforms, things like social media, Google Ads, things like that are really important there. And so that would be something you'd want to look into as well.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. It seems like it's time, and I really enjoyed having this webinar with all of you guys. I don't know, I hope you feel the same way. But truly, this is a very sweet topic for everyone, and it's truly gonna make the difference for merchants and retailers on 2017. So the topic is really worthwhile that you keep searching for it, that you try to keep updated into it, and eventually, I mean, why not just start leveraging on the knowledge that people like the Plumtree Group, like Windsor Circle, like CommerceBlend, knowledge that we all have, and that in the end we just aim to help you succeed with your business, help you grow your business, and scale them. So thank you everyone for joining today.
Yeah, thank you, Maria, and thank you very much, Polly. And Polly, just to reiterate, you'll be sending out the recording, making that available to everyone as well. Anyone who didn't get questions answered or maybe wants some additional insights or one-on-one to delve into your particular scenario, please don't hesitate to reach out to Polly, myself, or Maria. We'd be happy to follow up with you.
And I'll include with the email with the link, I'll include everyone's contact information as well.
Right. So thank you everyone for joining. I wish you a very nice day or a very nice evening, if it's the case.
And live bold in 2007.
Yes.
Happy holidays and Happy New Year in advance.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye.